Thank you for coming. This is the second talk in this place for the Dutch Game Day, organized by Dutch Game Association and Alessandra from Control. I'd like to very much welcome Ali. We're going to listen to a talk about Tales of Bitsun, and we were supposed to listen to Ehsan, but he didn't get to his visa from Iran. So, but we found the perfect other person to talk about this game, the CEO for Black Cube Games, Ali. So please welcome Ali.
Yep, thank you very much. Sorry if I'm a little bit slow. Ehsan was supposed to do this talk, so I took over for him a little bit last minute, so I might be reading a little off my notes. Apologies in advance. So we're all looking for ideas and inspirations and unique selling points for our games. Unique selling points can be genre, gameplay, characters, story, theme, and a lot of different things. Today I'm going to talk about how we came up with our ideas and how we took inspiration from our own culture, Persian culture, to make a game. Hopefully this will inspire you and give you some thought about, like when you're making your own games, this would give you some things to think about. So my name is Ali, by the way. I forgot to introduce myself. From Black Cube Games. We've been developing games for over 10 years. Last year, we made our biggest independent title, The Tale of Bitsun, released on PC and Xbox. We're 10 people full-time. The Tale of Bitsun is a action-adventure narrative game. We based it off an old Persian poem from the poet Nizami Ganjavi, the poem of Khosrow and Shirin. It's a very famous Persian romantic poem. I will not spoil the whole story of the poem. I'll tell you parts of it. I'll explain the story, the game, but for the ending, you'll have to play the game to find out, or read the poem if you want. So this is a short trailer of the game, just to give you a feel of what it looks like.
There are worlds beyond the one we see each day. Therein dwell stories of love and sacrifice, ambition and pain. And in a realm of shattered dreams and forgotten souls, a story has escaped. This is a tale of determination.
Oops. That's not the end of it.
Of a man carving his place in destiny, forging a path through blighted lands, and confronting the greatest foe of all. But we are small, in a world of breathtaking beauty and startling indifference. Our lives but fleeting flickers in history's vast expanse, and weaving but a single thread in the great tapestry requires mighty sacrifices.
Okay, so I'll explain the poem, the original poem that we took inspiration from. The poem is called Khosrow and Shirin. It's a poem from the poet Nizami Ganjavi from the 12th century. The original poem goes like this. The Khosrow is the prince of Iran. He has a friend called Shapur. Shapur tells him of the princess of Armenia. The princess of Armenia is called Shirin. Khosrow falls in love with this princess immediately just by hearing about her and seeing her picture. Shapur, the friend, goes to Armenia and also talks with Shirin. He also shows Shirin a picture of Khosrow, and Shirin also falls in love immediately. Khosrow goes to Armenia to visit Shirin. A bunch of stuff happens. They try to meet each other a couple of times. They don't run into each other. They see each other once accidentally. They don't recognize each other. I won't go into details. But they finally meet. They meet, but at the same time, Khosrow's father, the king of Persia, dies at the same time. The king dies, and a powerful general takes over the kingdom of Persia. Shirin agrees to marry Khosrow, but under the condition that he takes over his kingdom first. Khosrow goes away to take over his kingdom, but at the same time, a sculptor named Farhad also falls in love with Shirin. Khosrow kind of wants to get rid of Farhad. He's back home dealing with more important things. So he sends a message to Farhad. He's like, if you want to prove your love to this princess, you have to carve out this mountain to show your love, and so everyone believes it. And Farhad is like, yes, that makes sense, I'll absolutely do that. He goes out to this mountain and he starts carving out this mountain to prove his love for the princess. While he's carving out this mountain, he receives a letter that his love, Shirin, has died. Is this the truth? Like, what's happening? You'll have to play the game or read the poem to find out. But that's the overall story of the poem. We wanted to take this love story and we wanted to take that poem and try and make that into a game. We wanted to keep as much as the original poem and as much of the original story as we could, but we also wanted to make a game which has very different requirements than poems. Translating different media has a lot of challenges in itself. If you try to translate something directly, you can destroy it very easily, as we've seen with books made into films and other mediums made into each other that doesn't really convey the same messages or doesn't have the same impact as like the original work. So we thought we could take elements of the story, but also introduce a lot of things from areas that we thought make sense into the poem, and not directly do the story directly try and change that poem into a game. In the game, you play as Farhad in his quest to find his identity and his love. Since you're playing as Farhad, we needed the player to control the character. We needed we needed there to be action and also exploration. We introduced enemies, we introduced combat and some puzzles into the game that doesn't exist in the original poem. We needed to make the story have some sort of action curve because players of action-adventure games expect there to be like ups and downs during the game that they're playing. So we tried as much as we can to keep to the poem, but we changed it quite a bit. Also, another problem was we needed to translate a lot of the things from Persian culture to something that all cultures across the world could understand. That was also a big something that was very difficult, since a lot of references, for example, might make sense in Persian culture, but would not directly translate. So we had to try and pick out things that do translate across cultures, which I'll maybe talk about a little bit more once we get to it. So we basically added some characters, we added some elements to the story to make it all fit together. Show you how the game quickly plays. You wake up as Farhad, the main character. You don't really remember anything or where you are. The poem is, the game is generally narrated, so the narrator tells you the story as you're playing through it in parts where there are no action, for example. The narrations are a little bit poemy as well. We try to keep the poemy feel of the game.
How did I come to be here? He asked himself. No, that's not the right question. Nor is where I'm going. A single terrible realization crystallized in his fogged mind. I don't know who I am.
When you enter the world, you explore levels, you fight enemies, and solve puzzles. So here's generally how that looks. The enemies. These are enemies that are trying to stop Farhad from doing what he's set out to do, for example, in the game. In the game, we have what we call the revelation realm, where it's basically Farhad's memories, his subconscious. We try and tell a lot of the story during this revelation realm. After each level or during each level, the parts where we want to slow things down and kind of more explain the story, Farhad enters his memories. Sometimes we enter other character memories. So the revelation realm is generally for the stories and the memories of these characters. Oops.
He then felt despair. The kind that only the truly alone know. But he was mistaken. There was another in this ethereal place.
Once you complete a level, you overcome all of the enemies or all the obstacles in your path. You get to the mountain at the end of each level, and you carve out the mountain. A mountain is a metaphor for the most difficult thing a human itself has to face. Carving out stone, especially during the 12th century, was one of the most difficult things that you had to do. And it's kind of a metaphor to say that you would do anything, the hardest thing possible for love, and love gives you the energy and inspiration to do everything. Also, love is something that is a theme across all languages, all cultures can understand, and everyone can relate to. This is Farhad carving out the mountain. I'll go through our characters, our game characters, and what inspired us to make these characters, what elements we use in these characters, and where we got our ideas from. One of the main areas that we could incorporate Persian culture was inside of these characters. We also didn't know a lot about our own culture, so there was a lot of research that we had to do. We had to go to museums. We went to museums. We talked to a lot of people who knew more about us, more about the themes we were looking into. A lot of the character clothes, their unique features, the weapons, the enemies. These were all basically stuff that we researched and studied. So it wasn't stuff that we knew before we started to make the game. We took a lot of inspiration from elements in museums, a lot of weapons, as you can see. I don't know, it's a little bit small, but all the weapons in the game were from actual artifacts from that era specifically. The main character, Farhad, we saw from coins and from sculptures. The Persians had long hair with also we saw a lot of white headbands that we decided to incorporate. The mustache was something we saw in a lot of coins as well that we took inspiration from. We saw somewhere that in some areas they had a lantern on their belt that we used more for gameplay purposes. The yellow lantern, if you can see that, we wanted to kind of make the character pop out in the middle of the screen, so it's very clear, like it gives extra visibility gameplay-wise. So we saw that lantern object in a museum, and we thought this could kind of fix that problem that we had, that the character was kind of blending in too much with the background. These are the main weapons that Farhad uses. All of them are from actual artifacts. We weren't creating, we're not creating like a historic documentary, so not everything is 100% historically accurate, and we didn't really try and aim for that. We just tried to take inspiration from the things that we researched and the things that we saw. This is Shirin, the princess of Armenia. Armenia was part of the Persian Empire back then, but it was a different area with different population. We looked into the history of Armenia. We spoke to some of our Armenian friends to try and understand their culture and try and understand what Shirin would say, like how she would talk. And also we tried to match her clothes. The cane in her hand is something from Armenian royalty. Her face structure, we tried to gather from references as well. Khosrow is the king, well, he ultimately was the king of Persia. This is actually a real character in history. Khosrow was one of the most successful kings of the Sassanid era. He is the villain of the story. In Farhad's story, he's the villain. In history, he was the king. He did, I don't know, good and bad things. Like the ethics were very different in that era. So, but in this story, he's our bad guy. We removed a lot of his story from the game because of development constraints, but his character as well, we based on the real sculptures of him. You can see one of some of his sculptures or inscriptions in the mountains that we took inspiration from. Nizami is the poet of the original poem. He's not inside of his poem himself, but we wanted to put Nizami in the game. Nizami's type of storytelling is very similar to Shakespeare. There's papers showing similarities between Nizami and Shakespeare's style of writing. And also the poem of Shirin and Farhad is similar to the story of Hamlet in some ways. We really wanted to have the poet inside of the game. You release the Nizami from shackles in the game. Nizami himself said that his poems have given him, have saved him and given him meaning. So that's what we tried to kind of incorporate in the game. Onaita is a Persian goddess. She was the god of water and the protector of women. In ancient Persia, she doesn't exist in Nizami's poems, but we wanted to also have old Persian gods and heroes in our story. In the game, she helps Farhad. In her lore, in Persian history, or in Persian lore, she is the keeper of this ring the ring is called the Farda Izadi, which is kind of a sacred goodness that kings of the kingdom of Persia hold on to as a symbol of the good that they do and the righteousness they have. In this story, the king is kind of not being as righteous as he should be. He is messing with Farhad. He's he's like doing bad to Farhad. So Anahita, the goddess, is on the side of Farhad, and she believes that this ring of sacred goodness should be taken away from the king. He's not worthy of it anymore. We have an all-seeds tree who gives you quests in the game. We thought an all-knowing tree is something understood across cultures, so we wanted to incorporate that in. The all-seeds tree is a tree that contains the seeds of all trees in the world in Persian myth. And this is something that we tried to, that we thought was a connector between all cultures. Next, I'll go to the enemies of the game. Enemies we defined by gameplay first. So they didn't come from the poem. They didn't come from the story. We needed gameplay elements. Inside the game, we needed specific types of enemies, for example, ranged or melee enemies, and we looked into how we can find characters in our culture and take inspirations from them to fit the gameplay needs that we needed. We looked into old Persian folklore and myth. The first type of enemies are these gulches. These are like gnome type characters. They're simple melee enemies. There's lots of them. This is a parry. This is very similar to witch. The witch concept. In Persian culture, the parry isn't necessarily a bad character, but we needed enemies, and this is what we took inspiration from. So in our game, she is a type of enemy. She would. In Persian culture, she uses her voice to trick people a lot. So that's what we tried to try and take inspiration from as her type of enemy. The Div is kind of like the basic strong enemy. It's very similar to demons. This is our visualization of it. There's not one specific image, for example, in Persian culture that we could use. So we kind of came up with all the different elements of this character. For example, the combination of the animal and the human structure of the body, the hooves, the lion with horn-type head, and the cane. These are things that we took out from different stories, different poems across Persian culture to kind of come up with a type of enemy. The soldier enemy, the Garibanvar enemy, is a Sassanid era soldier. It's a symbol of the government who is blocking you and stopping you from reaching what you want. We base this also on the soldiers, on stone carvings and coins from that era, the weapons and also shields as well. The Veil Guard is also a ranged enemy that we needed. In the poem itself, there were people who made fun of Farhad for doing something that makes no sense, and so this is a type of enemy that kind of tries to make fun of you in the game. It also throws rocks at you. The Guardian Div is also similar to the last Div, but we needed a bigger character. The final boss of the game is a character that kind of looks like a mountain. You have to defeat this boss to kind of finish the game. It's basically the mountain that you are fighting. On the character, there's inscriptions of the actual mountain that actually exists in the close to the city of Kermanshah in Iran. Yet the mountain of Bistun is an actual real mountain. So so this, at the end of the game, you need to kind of defeat the mountain to get to your love. The environment in the game, there's three kind of basic phases of environment: nature, human architecture, and also the revelation realm. At the beginning of the game, you're more in the nature part of the game, and as you're progressing, there's more human elements, there's more architecture, kind of signaling that you're getting closer to the king and the evil that is in the world. At the beginning of the game, you're much more in nature. Yeah. There was a lot of the relics from that era are from inscriptions in actual mountains. So we try to keep those inscriptions in the game. Some of the storytelling is from those inscriptions. You can kind of read and understand the environment and the theme through these inscriptions. In the revelation realm, you see both nature and human architecture. It's more of everything that is having a effect on Farhad's subconscious inside of the revelation realm, because it's his kind of dreams. You see influences from nature, but then also the evil kingdom that is kind of trying to close you down. We actually went and visited the mountain of Bistun, visited museums close to the city of Kermanshah in Iran, visited the inscriptions in the mountain. A lot of what we kind of were able to research was from talking with historians in that region, because they knew the most about the myths and the lore, and also they could tell us things that we could not research on the internet, for example, or they could show us things that was not really easily, we could not research that easily. This is called Taghabostan. It's a famous carving from King Khosrow as well. Some more pictures from that area. That's actually Mount Bistun. In this mountain, there is a place called Farhad Tarash, which means Farhad's carving. It's the biggest kind of mountain carving in Iran. It's like 30 meters by 200 meters. And the locals say this is what Farhad actually carved out in the mountain. In reality, this was probably commissioned by a king in that era, and it didn't. And it wasn't really made by Farhad, to say, but it's what the locals like to make stories about. Throughout history, a lot of kings have made inscriptions in this specific mountain. It's kind of like a flex for kings to do that. For promoting the game, one thing that we also did relating to Persian culture was we talked to a very famous Persian actress, Shohreh Aghdashloo. She also voiced some characters in Mass Effect 2, Destiny, and also Arcane. We used her voice for stuff in our trailer, and also in the game narrations as well. And this helped us with marketing a lot. And it was a great experiment for us to do as well. Has anyone seen this game? No? This game is called Cross the Dutchman by Triangle Studios. It's based on a old Dutch legend. Pierre Geloof's Dunya, I don't know if I'm saying his name wrong probably, but he had this really long sword in Dutch folklore. It's a game developed by Triangle Studios. Remco, I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and there are a lot of similarities between Cross the Dutchman and The Tale of Bistun. When we were talking, he also said they visited museums. We basically did pretty much the same thing, but Remco did this for this Dutch folklore, and we did it for our Persian folklore. But it was really cool to see a game based on the Dutch folklore as well. This is some screenshots from the game. It's a game from 2015, so it might be a little bit older, but it's a really cool game. I really liked it. So that's the end of my talk. I did want to dedicate the talk to everyone back in my home country of Iran who have lost their lives fighting for freedom over the last year. So I just wanted to ask you to care, be their voice, and hope for a brighter future. That's it for me.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. Before I give the questions over to them, I have one question. Yep. In the trailer, I heard a familiar voiceover of an actress, I think, from The Expanse, for example. Yep. How did you get to have her do the voiceover for it? She's also from Iran, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yes. So we basically reached out to her. What do you call? Agent, yes. We researched famous Iranian people, and she did a lot of voiceovers. She was already into games. She's also very famous. Her voice is extremely unique and amazing. And for us, we were like, this is perfect for us. It matches, it ticks every single voice, every single box. And also, she also promotes our game. This is going to be very impactful for us, and what really was. So we reached out to her agent. Our publisher did most of the negotiations, but we were really glad to get her to do it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. She's such a recognizable voice, right?
Yep.
So I was like, oh,
yep. Very unique.
That's very cool that she is also promoting the game.
Yep.
So thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, I will throw the microphone to you. Yes. I will try to throw it to you.
Hi, my name is Yasmin. I just wanted to say, first of all, that I really appreciate your talk, and I actually didn't know about the history either, so I find that really fascinating. I was just curious because you mentioned that you had to do a lot of research, go to a lot of museums. How long did that take you? Because I imagine it takes quite a lot of time.
So really, it was constrained by budget and our production timeline. We had one trip to Kermanshah for a couple of days, but researching was pretty much throughout the whole game. I guess different parts of the project took different amounts of time, but for sure, definitely visiting the area gave us like the most return, based on because there's a lot of things that don't exist on the internet, and but yeah, I say in terms of time throughout the project, we were continuously researching the game. And our pre-production time was around a year, so I guess during that first year was most of what we kind of extracted from different poems and different folklore.
Cool. I'm really excited to play it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, any more questions? Then we get to throw the microphone again, which is nice. Over there. It's not that far. Aw.
Like collaborative throwing.
Nice.
Hello. Also, thanks for your talk. I'm gonna check out the poet and the game for sure. I have a question about the lore that you put in the game. How much of it did you explain, and how much was it for more immersion?
So the game is narrated. So you start the game, the narrator kind of gives you a feeling of where you are, and then there's parts where there's action, There's parts where the character is thinking out loud. There's parts that the narrator tells you. And throughout the couple of hours of the gameplay, you kind of listen to a poem-y style narration of the game. So most of it is kind of told to you. But if you are interested, you can kind of explore like inscriptions in the game, kind of like read different things. The core part of the game is fully explained to you, though. But there's definitely a lot of things here and there you can kind of pick up if you're more interested.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, behind you.
Hello. Thank you. I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit more on how you came to the enemy characters. You mentioned that that gameplay was leading there, and I wonder how that came to be. Was it that you first developed combat and what kind of enemies you need, and then looking for that in the narrative as well, or was it more like a back and forth between narrative and gameplay? Yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
So initially, we created a demo for the first year of production. In that demo, we showed to a lot of people for playtesting and also to publishers. We kind of figured out what parts of the game we could do better and what parts we kind of can't do as good. And also, we kind of figured out what the flow of the game we wanted it to be. So we wanted it to. So based on experimentation, we wanted it to be a portion of storytelling, a portion of action, a portion of storytelling, a portion of action. Generally, the curve kind of changes a little bit because there's also puzzles. And then from the portions of action, we wanted there to be different types of action. So we needed different enemies for different types of action. And so from that, we kind of came into what gameplay we need. And then from what the type of gameplay we need, we looked across our research to see what fits that type of gameplay.
Thank you.
That answers your question. Yep.
Amazing. We have time for one more question, if there is any. No? Okay, that's okay. Thank you so much. Also, thanks to Ehsan, who could unfortunately not make it here, but thank you so much. Give a warm applause again for... In about 10 minutes, we will see you back with Koen Deetman on this stage, and on the other stage, we'll Freya Holme, Why Can't You Multiply Factors? So see you back in a few. Thank you.